Yes, guys, welcome back to the Cannon podcast. Somebody stole my beard. We are here talking about Myles Lewis-Skelly, and George is very, very excited for this one. We just did an hour looking at his clips, looking at him and his sort of his game footage. You can go check out on Patreon on a 7-day free trial from the link in the description if you're also interested. But here we are to talk. What do we want to talk? We want to talk about his journey. We want to talk about sort of how he might get in the first team. We want to look at the tactics. We want to look at the position. We want to talk the profile. George, I know this is a player we were saying on the clips that we did just before we started recording. I think I met George, what did we say, end of 22, early 23?
Yes, end of 22, beginning of the 22, before content with Alex.
Yeah,
BCA.
Which is, as we said on Scout, not even worth living.
Which some are essentials.
But yeah, I remember at that time you were already propping Myles. So this has been a long time coming. Talk to us about Myles. We sort of discussed it, as I say, on the clips, but sort of the journey, sort of where you first came across him, why he's so rated. I know, but if people who are sort of still getting to grips with him, tell us all about your boy Myles Lewis-Skelly.
Yeah, I'm more proud than his mum. Everyone's seeing the clip.
I think she watches the Cannon. I've heard rumors. So hello, Mrs. Lewis-Skelly. If you're here.
Mrs. Lewis-Skelly, I love your son.
Yeah,
he's
not in a weird way.
Not in a weird. Well, so I know that's an overused one, but the thing is, look, with Myles, I heard about him back in 2021. I mean, him and Ethan, they're a package deal as far as what the academy and what circles were saying, and he's always been somebody that has. When you see these type of talents, you don't need to be a football analyst. You sit there and you say, it smacks you in the face right off the start. And then it's like, okay, how do I make sure, does he have the mentality to succeed, to maximize this talent? Does he have the luck with no injuries? Because talent wise, it's all there. And there's a unique player there. And for people that may not know him, and a quick description of his play style, we're talking about a carry first midfielder that's got a really big passing range, which is very unique for a player of that profile. He's somebody that has an incredible sturdiness under contact. It's a defining trait, his ability to get himself between man and ball, almost keep them in jail, and then burst past you and carry. This is a player that will immediately look to break lines, and he will carry through the block. The biggest thing about Myles is not his height, it's his bravery and his ability to spot gaps and relentlessly try to exploit them. Whether that's through a pass or carry, it's up to him, really. He doesn't mind either. He does prefer carrying the ball, and you're going to see very big instances of Myles maybe being a little bit overly aggressive in terms of trying to carry through the entire team. This is something that he loves doing. As a player, he really reminds me of the old player Moussa Dembele from Spurs. And that was one of my favorite midfielders ever. If you're going to ask George, like, what kind of midfielder do you like? I like a very sturdy, physical midfielder that can carry in both short and long distances, that I feel isn't tied to one skill. He has that passing tempo to him, that variety of pass, whether that's on the floor or floated balls over the top. He is somebody that will take out multiple lines of defense with one pass, with one carry. He's that type of player. And he's incredibly boisterous, really. He's somebody that he's very loud with his play. And he's also a talker on the pitch. Everybody will see the red card that he took versus Spurs. But generally speaking, this is a guy that's been very involved in the community at youth level. This is a guy that is constantly talking on the pitch. He's a very loud personality, very different to Ethan, who's a little bit more quiet, introverted, reserved, and keeps to himself. Myles is the one that will yell at the party and say, "I've arrived. Where's the beer?" And he's that kind of player. Now, in terms of some cons, like really quickly, because there's always cons to a player. Again, I think that he can at times be over aggressive and at points be flat footed in how he approach tackles. He's got a really long leg to kind of torso ratio. So his tackling radius is quite big, which just means, when he does get beat and he is over aggressive, he is still able to kind of toe poke and reach markers quite well because he's got such long legs. And so that tackling radius is quite big, and he's incredibly physical. He will impose his physicality on you, and he will quite literally take you by the hand and throw you to the ground. That level of dominance is something that, I showed a clip of against men that he recently did, but he will do that. But it is a weakness that he can be overly aggressive. And lastly, he's incredibly 1 foot dominant. So he can shift to his right and play passes one touch with his right foot. But there are times that, especially when he's opening up to drive into space, whether it's through a pass or a carry, he can choose to cut across his body just to use his left. And so he can use his right more and more effectively to evade markers. Actually, evade's the wrong word, but to protect the ball better. He is very dominant with his left, which isn't a huge problem if you're elite at it, which he is. But I think that's something that he can work on.
I think that's really nicely summarized, and yeah, I would recommend anyone. It's on George's feed, but also if you just put in Myles MK Dons, watch this guy. Just bodying this guy. I mean, it's unbelievable the quality that he has. So in terms of his journey, before we come on to the profile and stuff, he joined the academy at 8 years old. I think Jack Wilshere confirmed that he joined at 8 years old. Yeah. He was born in Islington on the 26th of September 2006, so he's just turned 18. He's gone through the ranks with England, so he's done U16s, U17s, U18s last year, and U19s this year. I think he's played for us once in the Premier League against Man City. He's played for us in competitive fixtures. He played for us, obviously starting against Bolton and also against PSG. So he's actually made his Champions League debut before Ethan. And I think this is something you could discuss in a second about the comparison between the two and sort of how they get into the first team. But let's come to that in a second. I only wanted to add a couple of things before we get on to sort of how he gets into the first team. Something that I'd love to see during the clips. We sort of saw it against Bolton, the quality behind the ball and that reverse pass that he has, the sort of disguise pass on his left. It's so nice. It's so repeatable as an action, something that I think we could see, especially if he is going to come into the team as a left back. He almost feints you and then cuts back across himself with this pass. It's really, really nice to see sort of consistently. And also want to credit just Hale End and the quality of education they clearly give these guys. They're not only brilliant professionals when they come into the team and clearly have the sort of the desire and the mentality, but all the basics of football are all there. Stuff like the stutter step, so you don't go crashing into your man in the duels, the scanning. There's a couple of clips we looked at where he's just like 1, 2, 3, 4. He knows exactly where he's going to receive it. All the stuff receiving on the back foot, weight of pass, message on the pass, all that stuff that we talk about. There's a reason they can get into Mikel's team because they've had the education they've had. So credit to Hale End. And finally, the last point I had here was about his character that I just want to come back to. This is a guy, and I've said this before, but this is a guy who against Spurs was coaching, was telling his seniors, the Jorginhos, the Parteys against Spurs on the touchline, go here, do this. That's who he is. That is, if we want, we discuss obviously the team a lot on what we want. It's not about going all out on this side, but could we add a little bit more bravery, a couple more characters in the team? I think we could. Let's come on to the tactics then and sort of where you see him fitting in. I'd also love to fold in maybe that discussion about Ethan as well and sort of where he fits in and how we do that. We've seen him as a left back. That feels not temporary, but like a sort of a solution to get him into the team. And that's where he's now playing, where he wasn't before, playing for the U21s. Do you see him getting minutes there? And long term, where do you see him as well?
Absolutely, yeah. So we'll just flip to the tactics board here. We've seen him integrate, and I've said actually back in 2022, for me, I feel like we see these types of players enter through wide areas, and that's just because like when you see Myles here in kind of this inverted left back role, he'll take up positions in this traditional box midfield like this, and actually this is something that he excels in. For me, he would be a primary candidate for a double pivot. Much in the same way that I felt like Moussa Dembele was a carrier but a defensive 6'8". I think Myles is the exact same type of profile. He'll be introduced in these zones because he's got an ability to receive wide, drive inside, and then lay off the pass either down to the center back, or you have seen him simply carry and make this bursting run through. Yeah. He has that ability. Now, the only thing is Myles on the outside as an inverted left back, whipping in crosses from his left foot. despite being left-footed, is not something that you will see. Myles very much likes this corridor to play here. And if Marino is making an underlapping run for Martinelli to burst through, Myles will play the ball between the lines, between fullback and center back. He loves spamming that. But he'll stay in this pocket. Or he'll carry up through the middle. He's not somebody that loves to go on the outside. So as far as his integration at inverted left back, that's the one limitation that you might see. But down the line, I can absolutely see him kind of operate a little bit higher up and be more of that box-to-box midfielder and have Calafiori be kind of your left back. And when you're talking about Myles, he will be a little bit more of the one that's in the middle third, I would say. And you would need kind of either Odegaard or, you could see long-term the beautiful part of Nwaneri. And this is kind of a formation that you would see a little bit more where Myles takes over much in the same way that Odegaard likes to drop in the middle third and be part of a pivot to dictate play. Myles will do that from the left, freeing up the third midfielder to be more of a free-forming 10 that can float across the front line. That for me is his best position long-term, if we're talking where he'll end up and where I feel he'll end up ultimately. It's as a box-to-box 8. That is a 6'8", but should be part of a double pivot along with a Rice or another lone anchor that can share responsibilities there. But he has the flexibility to carry into these zones and lay off because he's not somebody that likes to receive up here and receive the ball from a Declan Rice. That's not something that Myles, while he can do, it's not something that you're gaining with him.
Yeah, I think the Dembele comparison is really good. It's a really good one. And I think it's always nice to have those comparisons because you sort of go, oh yeah, okay, and then there's the little tweaks, but you have this sort of a player that and a player that's kind of fitting into that mold. Also, I think it's worth saying as well when you say double pivot, because I think some people think about it in that sort of traditional Arsene Wenger way, where you literally have two people stood next to each other. I think it's more that that there are. I think what it is I look at him and I go, I think you limit him by having him too deep. I think he can do that, but his temperament, he wants to take players on. He wants to carry the ball. He wants to beat players and go up against them and push them out the way. You can't have your 6 doing that. He might change. I also think, and the modern 6, I'd be interested in your take on this. The modern 6 feels like it's getting bigger as well, just sort of in terms of height as well. And obviously Myles isn't the tallest player. So yeah, I think it all suits him in that position.
Well, and a big thing too is like when we talk about him in deeper zones, he's a lot more consistent with both his passing than he is higher up the pitch. And he does like to carry. Like when you're talking about a Moussa Dembele and somebody that likes to carry, just fundamentally, if you're on the last line and you're in the box, there's not a long distance to carry. You take out the ground for him to run and exploit by doing that anyways. And that is a superpower of his. So you want to see that, and that will help you get out of situations, especially against low blocks. He'll be brilliant against that. Against mid blocks, he'll be brilliant with the ball floated over the top in the back line, and spotting those runs, and the pass between center back and full back is something he loves exploiting. And so in those game states, he'll really, really thrive. And then I think in games that you want a physical battle, look, Myles is somebody, I'm not going to hide, that will throw an elbow. He is a bit of a nasty.
Well, there's a reason he came on against City in that game state, mate. There really is.
Yeah, and he's a competitor. And Ethan, again, this is just the difference in the two. I mean, Ethan will do it where it's very laissez-faire. I will play the game that comes to me, whereas Myles is a lot more proactive with his actions. He'll throw the first punch. If there's two boxers setting up, he will throw the first punch and say, okay, what do you have for me?
Maybe that's a good place to close off then, because I think obviously people, you mentioned at the start that they've been sort of paired together, Ethan and Myles or whatever. And obviously Myles has probably been the smaller name in that sort of category, partly because of what Ethan, I think, do you know what it is? I think partly because, so you sort of use the comparison of Busquets and Lampard and Gerrard or whatever. Yeah. You just remember output, don't you? You remember a goal, you remember an assist, like, of course, and someone in the attacking third is kind of more exciting, or can be. But I think what's maybe pertinent to this conversation is sort of looking forward the next sort of 5, 6, 7 years. Who's going to have, more of an impact at Arsenal? Who's going to have a bigger career, whatever? I think most people right now would probably say Ethan if they had to pick. But you're not so sure. And I actually agree with you because of the proliferation of players, and certainly in England as well, proliferate, easy for me to say, of players who are 8'10s. Who are those guys? I think players who can play behind the ball, who can be a little bit deeper, can be a bit more box to box, could play at fullback. There's a bit of a simpler pathway there. Ethan isn't displacing Erdegaard anytime soon. I'm telling you. So, and he isn't displacing Rice anytime soon. So, and I don't think he's necessarily suited right now for that. But Myles, I can see a number of different roles where he could play and at least get minutes.
Yeah, let's put it this way. Every time that we talk, who's the top 5 midfielders of all times? You're talking Iniesta, Zidane. You're talking your Xavis. You're talking, big boy Yaya Toure. You're talking about people with output, and very rarely are you talking Claude Makelele.
Yeah,
very rarely are you talking Busquets, right? And I just think that there's less of a pool of really talented carriers that are mobile sixes, and so I actually think he'll reach an upper echelon of the game purely because there's less people there, but also he's also got more, I think, versatility, whereas attackers, for me, it boils down in the final third to output, and there will always be a young, exciting, talented attacker, especially in England,
so many.
England and even world football. I mean, mate, look, it's the glory positions, right? So as a kid, you want to score the goals, you want to be the one finishing the action, and so yeah, I do think that he has. Look, they're both elite talents, and I always hate this question because everybody wants to create player wars. Let's have it right. They are absolutely top tier talents, and I think what's really unique is their unique profiles, right?
Yeah, and that we don't have as well.
And what I love, we talk about them being a package deal, mate. They complete each other in so many different ways as 2 8s, right? In a midfield 3. This pair have everything that you could want. They just need an anchor, and hey, we just bought the best anchor in the world that can platform these 2 youngsters. And I think the one thing I will say is both of these youngsters have a proclivity for central progression that is just not in our squad consistently enough. Yep. And it's the hardest thing to do in football. And they've got traits that allow them to go around people or to go over the top of people. But this ability to receive in tight spaces in the thick of the action and escape pressure and then create separation is something that they both do brilliantly. And I just think that Myles will entertain. Myles is, along with Ethan, they're both players that you buy a ticket to see, and they just get you excited. Yeah. Because they show you a level of talent and also a level of street footballer that you're like, God, I could never do that.
Yeah,
I want to say, like, I want to see it, and they relate in that way. But yeah, I do think that Myles will endear himself to people because he's a bit of a yapper. Yeah, I said that before.
Yeah. He's a goon.
Somebody.
He's got that about him, which I think is really nice, and I think we need that. And that's you said it there. Yeah. Like, they're both profiles that we need, which is really exciting. We've got spawned 2 midfield profiles that we're like, oh, we could do it.
£100 million talents, by the way. Like, in terms of, for me, I'm going to go that both of them, not tomorrow, not today. In 5 years, we're going to be talking, these are £100 million talents. And I think the way that Hale End has been able to do that, it's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, Saka, £100 million talent. These don't come around often where they're all that level.
They do at Arsenal, baby.
They do at Arsenal.
They do at Arsenal.
Can't all be, the Fergie boy class. I would argue there was 1 or 2 real top end, but then you've got Nicky Butt that they love to put in, and I'm like, really?
I watched Dimitar Berbatov on Sky Sports the other day, and like, no hate, but I just was like, if I could have predicted what his punditry was going to be like, he was like, he was like, the thing is, sometimes in football, it's not about tactics, it's about wanting, it's about mentality and leadership. I was like, oh right, funny that. Funny that. Weird. We'll finish there. George, pleasure as always. If you want to go check out those clips, please do from the link in the description. You can get that on a 7-day free trial. We want to do these scattered episodes. We'll do them sort of through the course of the season. So if there's anyone you want us to focus on, either at Arsenal or not at Arsenal, obviously if rumours come around and during the transfer window, we'll look at players from sort of abroad and elsewhere. But we want to have a look at players. I think we should do Jesus soon. I'm feeling a Jesus one.
That should be interesting.
I
Let us
prefer not to
know.
speak.
Let us know in the comments
I
if you
prefer
want
not to
me to
speak.
do that with Alex.
Let's finish there. Thank you all. Thank you, George.
Thank you, good sir.
Thanks for being here. And thanks for keeping Arsenal.